Hello bag builders, it's Diane from Spencer Ogg Soil Patterns and we are off on an adventure today. I'm introducing the Escape Pod Travel Collection. This adventurous make includes a large capacity weekend bag and a travel clutch. Stylish and organised travel at its best. It's 2 full written patterns with in-depth colour photos, full-size printable pattern pieces and 2 complete video sew-alongs, and all at one great price. And as always, layers are engineered to make it ideal for domestic sewing machines. When we travel, we often look for new and exciting experiences as well as the familiar and comfortable, don't we? Well, this collection is the perfect fit. It's perfect for a weekend away, the gym, or even as a baby changing bag. With pockets for your water bottle, phone, glasses, laptop, electronic devices, documents, and just about everything else. It's perfectly sized to add packing pods too. It even folds flat for easy storage. The travel clutch has compartments inside, credit card slots and a handy wrist strap. They make the perfect set. So how did the design come about? Well, I love the look of a barrel bag with gussets, but you just can't open the top zip wide enough to see the contents very well inside. The alternative is normally to make a large pouch shape, which doesn't have gussets, but then you lose the lovely structured look of the bag. Alternatively, we could make a boxy bag with zips going into the gussets on the side, but that didn't give me the sophisticated look I really wanted. So I threw myself into trying to develop something that fitted the bill. So after many hours of pondering, we have this ingenious way of creating the top flap silhouette. The zip opens wide to fully reveal the contents of your bag and give great access. The gussets mean we achieve the boxy structured shape and give a huge capacity for all your weekend essentials. And the flaps keep everything securely inside. The lining is held smartly tight inside the bag. No droopy lining syndrome here, as it's caught into every seam. And there's no binding, of course, because I know you hate that. The approximate finished dimensions of the weekend bag are 40 by 32 centimetres, and that's 16 by 12 3/4 inches, which is a suitable size for most airlines too. And if you need pockets, well, we have an abundance here. A large slip pocket on the front of the bag keeps things to hand and can be divided or left as one large pocket with a magnetic clasp. There's a luggage sleeve to the back with feature zip pocket. Inside is a huge zip pocket on one side and on the other a tabbed pocket to hold your devices or store your travel clutch. There is also a bellowed foam pocket, pen pockets, a fun glasses pocket on the gusset and a water bottle sleeve to the other side of the gusset. This bag has a one-piece gusset with a continuous strap around the bottom to add strength and act like a sling, so you can carry a decent weight without worrying your strap won't hold up. I'm classing the weekend bag as an intermediate level pattern, but all the processes are easy enough to follow. It just takes a bit longer to make. And then of course, just to make this into the perfect travel set, I've included the travel clutch. Yes, this comes included with the weekend bag pattern tee. It's the perfect large size for a travel organiser, as documents, passports, credit cards, tickets, your phone, wallet fit snugly and safely inside. The skill level for the clutch is actually easy, and the approximate finished dimensions are 28.5 by 19.5, and that's 11 3/4 by 7 3/4 inches. It features a wide zip top opening, sturdy inside passport pocket which divides the interior into sections for better organisation. It has credit card slots, decorative overlays to the front and back to tie you in with your weekend bag, a wrist strap to make it easy to grab on the go, and it will incidentally also hold an iPad without a case, or it could be an iPad case on its own. And it fits snugly and stylishly inside your weekend bag. The Escape Pod weekend bag is also sized so that it fits packing pods inside beautifully. So why not check out that Spencer Ogg pattern too if you haven't already made them. You'll find it on my website and it's a great addition to the bag. 2 medium or 1 large and 2 small fit snugly inside the bag for perfectly organised travel. And when you're back from your travels, you can pack the bag away and store it flat. Who wants a giant bag sat in the corner of your bedroom for the next 3 months? My testers made some amazing escape pod sets, some even adding the packing pods too. Thank you as always to all of them. Just have a look at some of these beauties, they really do make a statement. Everybody put their own stamp on them. The pattern is suitable for medium weight fabrics including canvas, home decor weights, waterproof canvas, cork, vinyl, oilskin and denim. The Escape Pod Travel Collection is available for download now by clicking on the link below this video, and you will receive both patterns in the set. For this and lots more Spencerog patterns and hardware, why not pop over to www.spencerog.com. I post regular free patterns and tutorials here on my YouTube channel too, so do subscribe when you're on here, so that you know when anything new appears. Join my Facebook group to ask questions and share pictures of your Spencerog makes. Please feel free to join up, and again I'll add the link in below. Now, an adventure is always better with friends, I think, so I'll be your travel companion every step of the way on this sewing journey. Hold my hand and let's go sew. I can only just see over these. Thank you for purchasing the Spencerog Escape Pod set pattern. I hope you're going to enjoy making it and making it along with me today. This video is for the weekend bag, and you'll find timestamps in text below the video to easily jump to the various stages of making up. Do remember to join my Facebook board to post your questions and show your photographs. If you need any help, I'm always there. If you're making a matching travel clutch, you'll find the link to the video tutorial for that on the written instructions for the clutch. It's separate, it doesn't follow on directly from this video, so just head there for the tutorial for the clutch itself. So if you're ready, let's go sew! So fabric suitable for the bag. For the outer, we want something that's quite robust and has some weight to it itself. So something along the lines of vinyl, waterproof canvas, cork, denim, oilskin, that type of thing that kind of supports its own weight. We will interface some of them. If you're using a canvas or a denim, something like that, then you would add the interface into the back. But things like the cork, the vinyl, the waterproof canvas, oilskin will all stand up on their own. They don't need any interfacing whatsoever. So today I'll be using the pink waterproof canvas, and this does have a coating on the back. It gives it a much more stable, robust feel. You can buy, it's a 600 denier, and obviously you can buy a lot of 600 denier waterproof canvases, some with and some without the backing. The printed ones tend to be without the backing, and many of the planes with, but it's that nice structure and that nice robustness that you actually need to give your bag some support. So if it's not got a backing, it probably isn't robust enough. For the lining, then quilt cotton is absolutely fine, and we also need some non-fraying fabric just for our overlay strips and our bottom overlay. I'm going to use cork today, but again, any non-fraying fabric, so cork, vinyl, leather. So onto interfacings. Interfacing for the outer, if you're using a robust fabric like vinyl, waterproof canvas, cork, oilskin, no interfacing needed at all. But if you're using a canvas, a denim or that sort of weight, then we do need to add interfacing. So interfacings for your outer fabric, I am suggesting for this pattern Decovil Light. It's a really nice product. Not to be confused with Decovil Heavy, that is too heavy. We are going to use that in the bag base, but not for the body of the bag itself. So this is for your outer. Decovil Light. If you can't get Decovil Light, then you could use a lightweight buckram, which is used in curtain manufacture, pelmet manufacture, but you'll find that quite readily and it's quite economical. Or if you can't find either of those, then you could use 2 layers of a medium weight interfacing, a woven one such as SF101. So that'd be 2 layers to build it up to the level of a Decovil Light. For the lining fabric, then we're just going to use, for quilt cotton, we would just use a medium weight woven or non-woven fusible interfacing, SF101 or F220, lots of those about. As I just mentioned previously, we will need a small piece of Decovil Heavy for the bag base, and that's just to make it nice and stable. Also helps if you're going to add bag feet for strength. And over here I've collected all my items I'm going to need. I won't go through in great detail, it's all there in the text for you, but basically we will need 3 zips. I'm going to use continuous zip today. I've specified in the pattern the sizes for each, but you can just cut them to fit from continuous zip. We need our webbing. I've used 1.5 inch cotton webbing. The hardware for the bag, we're going to need some magnetic snaps, some 1.5 inch D-rings, some 1.5 inch swivel clasps, an adjuster buckle in 1.5 inch, and some polyester strip. I can't say it, and some polyester thread for strength, so I used Gutterman Sew-All normally. I'm also going to use a logo badge, and optionally you can add some bag feet too. Just a few tips before we start the pattern. Number 1, you do need to include both large pockets inside the lining, and that's pocket pieces H. And that's because we're going to turn the bag through. We turn it through twice, so we turn it through one side and then we turn it through the other. So you need both of the large pockets within the lining, so don't skip those or you'll struggle. The pattern has lots and lots of other pockets, and all the other ones you can pick and choose from. You know, there's water bottle pockets, foam pockets, you know, slip pockets also. So just choose which of the others you want to add. You don't need to add them all. For the overlay strips on the bag, they are purely decorational, but it does look really nice with them. Just make sure you use a non-fray fabric. It can be, as we said earlier, a cork or a vinyl, but you could also use something like a ready-made binding. Anything that the edges are finished on, even a piece of webbing or a piece of ribbon, anything that you like the look of and the contrast with the bag. Just to doubly remind you, if you are using something like waterproof canvas, cork, vinyl, you do not need to interface that at all. It'll be too heavy if you start putting Decovil Light onto those, so just leave those without, they're perfectly fine. Don't add any fleece or foam. Foam would make the bag far too heavy. It is something we can fold down and put in the cupboard, but you'll find it's too weighty and too bulky if you add fleece to it. So just leave it without. Decovil Light is perfectly suitable. Leave your pattern pieces or the label supplied pinned to your pattern pieces, because there are a lot of pattern pieces with this, and it makes things so much easier if you've got everything labelled. You're not going to get confused because some pieces look very similar as you can see, but one might be narrower than the other. So leave those to pin to it. When you come to print off your pattern pieces, you'll find that a couple of the larger ones are cut on fold, and basically if you're doing the lining that's fine, but if you're doing a larger piece you might find you don't want to cut on the folds, you might not be able to cut accurately. So what I usually do then is print 2 off, flip 1 over and just stick it to it, so I've got a full piece. And of course, as ever, try and save paper. Just print your pattern pieces and try not to print the instructions, just follow the instructions on screen. You can usually zoom in and see them better anyway. So that's always a help. Okay, so print everything off, get everything cut and fused. All the charts are in the cutting instructions and in the pattern. So when you're ready, let's make a start. So let's start with lining side 1, and that will be what ends up as the front lining with your zip pocket inside the bag. So we're going to construct a couple of pockets to go on the front of that first. So I'm going to take my phone pocket piece K, and I've taken that to the ironing board, and I've already pressed a 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch hem along top and bottom. This piece is actually square, so it doesn't matter whether you use which orientation you use it in, unless you've got a directional print and then you want it to look the right way around with the hems at the bottom. So as I say, I've turned a hem, a little bit of franking face in there. I've turned a hem top and bottom on that, and now I'm going to fold it with right sides facing, so I'll match the hems at the bottom. clip in place, and then I'm going to stitch along both short edges with a 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. We want to keep that hem folded up and folded into place. So we're leaving that bottom folded edge open with the hems, and you've got the turn at the top. If I forget to tell you again, backstitch at the beginning of every seam, beginning and end of every seam, and keep trimming all the way through. Trimmity trim trim is my mantra, because there's nothing worse than getting to the end and having loads and loads of thread tails hanging out of seams and where you can't get to them. So there we go. So that's done. All I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn that through. I'm going to take it to the ironing board and press it nice and flat. There we are, pressed nice and flat. And then I want to top stitch the top long folded edge, not the edge that's open. And I'm going to stitch it just 3mm or 1/8 of an inch from the edge. But I'm also going to add a few extra lines of top stitching. You don't have to, completely optional, but it does add a bit of interest, it adds extra stability, and it adds strength, and that goes for any inside pocket or any slip pocket that you're making. So there, I just added 3 lines, but you can go mad and do the whole thing. Trim up. And now I'm going to place that on my front lining panel. So grab your front lining panel A and a cutting mat. So make sure that is piece A. Piece B in lining is actually a little bit longer because we need an allowance for the seam allowances on there, but not on this one. So grab that and grab a rule, a quilt ruler. In fact, I've been told off because I always call it a quilt rule, and it's not the same countrywide at all. A lot of you just use the word quilt ruler, and a lot of the testers didn't know what I meant by a rule actually. But it's all good, I just changed it to ruler. So we want to slit that or cut it 4 inches down. And that's 10 centimetres or 4 inches, and it's down from the long straight edge here, the top. So you've got your curved edges towards the bottom. So I'm going to slit it through there. I'm just going to turn it around because it's easier for me to do. Bit of a strange angle, that one. So 4 inches there. Try and be nice and accurate. So we now have an upper and a lower lining panel, and that's what we'll call them. If you're using a directional print, just make sure you keep that in the same direction as you've cut it. So I'm going to remove that for now, the upper one. You can, by the way, put a logo tab centrally on that upper panel if you want to. I'll put that to one side for now. I'm going to just work on the lower lining panel. So I want to attach this, but I want a little sort of bellow inside it so that I've got a bit of extra space to put my phone in. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to fold a 1/2 inch tuck into that pocket. So just kind of fold it in half, just so you can see where it lies, and then get a ruler, just kind of mark where 1/2 inch is. That's 1.25 centimetres, then just bend it back over so you can see it leaves you a little tuck. Now you can have that any size you want. You can do it over here, but I just find having about half on that side will give me a bit of extra room for the phone, and then we can segregate these into pen pockets or just leave it open. So I'll just take that to the ironing board and I'll just press that in place first. There we go, and I brought a couple of pins back with me. So we now want to position that on the pocket, and we want to position it centrally across the width. So you can just eyeball it if you want to, and we want to have it 2 inches or 5 centimetres down from that edge where we cut. So around about there. So just eyeball it is fine, just give yourself plenty of space there. So our top stitching is here and that edge is still open at the bottom. So I'm just going to pin that in place at the edges. Just for a second. Keep that tuck folded in and then just lift that, and where you see the fold underneath, we're going to stitch along that fold, holding the pocket in place. So don't worry about all this loose pocket at the moment. I'll just put a pin in there to hold it down, but I'm going to just stitch along that one edge which was underneath that fold that you can see. And that separates my 2 sides to my pocket. Trim. Take that pin out now, and then just fold that back over that stitch line. You see that stitch line there? Just fold it back over, and then just nice and flat now. We can stitch sides and bottom 3mm or 1/8 inch from the edge just to secure it. So we're leaving that top edge open. And that will close the pocket at the same time. So that's closed the bottom edge up and held everything in place. Trim up. And that's our phone pocket complete. So you can see you've got a cute little bellow in there. That gives you extra space. If you want to, you can separate these into pen pockets. You could just add another line of stitching or 2 lines of stitching, or you can leave it open as another large pocket. And now we're ready to start our zip. So I've cut myself a 33 centimetre or 14 inch piece of continuous zip, or you could use a 14 inch zip, either's fine. I'm going to use a number 5 zip here. I've said number 3 in the pattern, but it really doesn't matter, either or, whichever you've got handy. I'm going to grab my zip tabs, 4 of those, and then I need 2 for each end. So I'm going to lay them, move that down. So one right side up, zip on top, and then one right side down on top of that. And clip that in place. So I'll just show you that. So my zip end is right against the end of the zip tabs. I'm going to be stitching it and then folding those back. So you've got your zip sandwich in the middle. So I'll now stitch across that end with a 1 centimetre or 3/8 inch seam allowance. Trim up. And do the same with the other side. It's a bit more awkward with the side because it's open, so you can just stitch over that side quickly just to hold it together. So grab 2 zip tabs. My counting isn't so good. I've got 5 zip tabs. Okay, so same again on this side. We want a zip tab right side facing upwards. You zip on top. Up. And 1 zip tab right side down and clip it in place. So you've got your zip tabs facing each other, the right side facing each other, and you've got your zip in the middle. I usually put a few extra clips on this side just to keep it in place while I am sewing on that open edge. Again, a 1 centimetre seam allowance on that edge. Take the clips off and trimity trim. Okay, so I'm now going to open those up, press them in place, just for speed, and then we're just going to stitch the ends just to secure them. That's just a little basting stitch just within the seam allowance. You're not going to see that afterwards. It's just to hold it while we stitch it on. Same on the other side, so those are together, open it out, flip them together and give it a stitch on the end. If your zip tabs are wider than your zip, then just trim them to the width of the zip, that's fine. So we want it all to match, there we go. Don't top stitch the ends at the moment on these sides, you might be tempted, but don't do it because we're going to do that later on. I do have a video on YouTube if you struggle with attaching zips nice and flat without waves. Do have a look at that if you need help with zips, and I'll put the link in below and hopefully up here somewhere as well. So we're going to take our lower lining piece again. Got it right side up. I'm going to mark the centre point. Just fold it in half. So it's just the centre point at the top. I'll just put a little snip in it. And I'm going to mark the centre of my zip. Just with, I won't snip that, I'll just use a little bit of disappearing pen. And I'm going to lay this face down with the zipper to the left when closed. I'm looking at it upside down, that's right, isn't it? So zipper to the left when closed, face down on top, and I'm going to centre the mark across my top edge of the fabric with the centre mark of the zip. And then just clip it all the way along. Pull those tabs out nice and flat. They'll be a bit longer than the body itself, that's fine, we'll trim those off afterwards. And now I'm going to take one of my inner pocket lining pieces, that's piece H. So I've got 4 of those, so just grab one of those. Keep the label on, you don't want to lose them. More franken facing, don't look. I've got loads as well. I don't like to waste any though. Nobody knows. So I'm taking that inner pocket lining piece H, and again I'm going to mark the centre. Just at the top edge if you're using a directional print. Just with a snip or with chalk, and I'm going to lay that face down on top of my unit, matching up that centre point again with the centre point of my zip and the centre point of my lower lining panel. There we go, and then I'll just clip that all the way along. Add a few extra clips if you want. So you see that is shorter than your panel, but that's fine, that's what we want. And then we'll stitch all the way across there, edge to edge, don't stop at the end of the pocket, with a 6mm or 1/4 inch seam allowance. Lift up and move your zip. There we are, and then we can just flip that up and over to reveal our zip, and I'm going to take that to the ironing board and press it with the wrong sides together. There we are, beautifully pressed. And now I'm going to top stitch just along the top edge of the body panel, just below the zip, 3mm or 1/8 inch away from the fold, and I'm going to trim down those zip tabs just to match the same width as the body panel. Doesn't matter if you do that before or after you've top stitched. There we are, looking really pretty. Pretty. Trim, and then we're going to reach and grab that upper lining panel, and make sure you lay that right side up, and make sure if you were using a directional print that it's looking the right way up, so everything's in the right direction or the same direction. I'm going to flip that right side down on top so you've got right sides together. So clip that in place, and now I'm going to flip that over. So I'm looking at the pocket piece, and I'm going to grab another of my piece H inner pocket lining, and I'm going to lay that face down on top, and I'm going to line it up with the sides of the previous pocket, put the top edge of my zip tape, clip that in place. You'll see the underneath side is a little bit longer. We're going to trim that off afterwards. So clip that all the way across, so you've got your layer there of lining, zip and pocket. And then we're going to stitch across there again with a 6mm or 1/4 inch seam allowance. Move my zip somewhere. There we are, and that's our pocket attached with our zip. Just trim up the bottom edge of that pocket so you can see the lower pocket lining is slightly longer, so just trim it up to match the same length as the upper layer. And then I'm going to take that to the ironing board and I'm going to press up a 1cm or 3/8 of an inch hem on both layers of that pocket lining. I'm also going to flip my upper panel back up and give it a nice press into place. So I'm all pressed. I've pressed up the hems on the pocket, I've flipped it over and I've pressed a full front with the upper back and open at the top. So I now need to join the sides of the pocket, or the pocket bag as I would call it. So just lift this lower lining and you can see your pocket underneath. Just put some clips in it at the side, and we're just going to stitch both sides with a 1cm or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. We're not stitching the bottom at the moment, that's staying open, and you won't be able to stitch right to the top. Just come as far as you can. You can get virtually to there, but stop before you go into the seam allowance. We're going to catch that in afterwards, so just these seams now. I'm leaving my zipper foot on at the moment because I'm going to top stitch the front here afterwards, so I'll need that on again, so I'll just leave it on for now. So that's our pocket side stitched. Just flip your lower panel back down, and now we're going to top stitch across the top edge of the zip, just 3mm or 1/8 inch from the folded edge. Trim the baby. There we are. So now we just want to secure in the sides of those pockets because we haven't quite caught in the sides of those pockets as yet. You can see we just need to stitch over there, so we'll do that from the front. So we're going to stitch a box shape over here, and that will catch in this little piece that we didn't catch beforehand. So if you start from the top line of top stitching, stitch down about 2 inches, just catching in the end of the zip end there. It's about 2 inches in, and then about 2 inches down, so we've got plenty of space to catch this in. We'll go down further, it doesn't matter, we're literally just catching in this piece here. So do that on both sides. Trim, and there we go. So we've got a nice little box shape at both sides, and that will have caught in the sides of the pocket there with plenty of space, so that's nice and secure. So that is our front lining complete, so we can place that to one side and start on our second lining panel. So we're ready to start lining side 2, which is our back lining with tab pocket. So you've got a nice big slip pocket for your device, you know, your laptop or your tablet, whatever you're carrying around with you. So first of all, we're going to construct the tab. So take lining pocket tab piece E. Sorry if you can hear that drilling noise, they're going mad today. There's non-stop. So take your 2 lining pocket tab pieces E, and on one I have just marked using the paper pattern piece, the positioning for my magnetic clasp. You can use Velcro here if you prefer, it doesn't have to be a magnetic clasp. I've added a little bit of Decovil to the back just for added strength, and I'm going to add the male part of the clasp to this part, this side of the tab. So I'll just mark that using the slots in the washer. Don't poke yourself in the process. Put a pin at the end if you're worried about going too far. And male part through the front. Touch the back, washer on. And, oh, where's my ruler? I'm using my fingers. I'll be sorry tomorrow. There we go. Okay. So put the female part to one side at the moment and get rid of those. So I'm going to place the two tab pieces right side together, but before I do that I might just draw on my curve because it's not the easiest thing. I'll just do it freehand if you are worried about it. It's easier to follow a line than to follow the edge. There we go. And then I'll clip those right sides together, lining everything up. And then I'm just going to stitch around that using a 1 centimetre or 3/8 inch seam allowance, leaving the top edge open, so that top short edge stays open. I'm just going to stitch around there and getting a nice even curve around the bottom. You can do it straight if you want. In fact, it can be any shape you want. You can make it bigger if you want to. It'd be nice curving into the bag, slightly longer. I wouldn't go into the side seam, anything too long and go into the side seams because it's going to add extra layers, but certainly you can have a much wider tab if that's what you'd like, or a longer one. So I'll just stitch that. Take your time going around the curve, and actually if you want to leave a zipper foot on, that'll give you much more room around that clasp. I think I should have done that. There we go, that's fine. So I'm going to trim those seams down by half, and I'm going to snip around the curve just so it lies nice and flat. You can, once you've turned it through, you can actually slip an extra bit of Decovil or Decovil Light in if you want to. It's fine as is, but if you did want something more rigid, then that's easy to do. There we go. And then I'll trim it by half. It's really that curved edge we want to reduce. Now you can laugh at me turning it through. Here we go. It's not too bad when it's just 2 layers of quilting cotton, she says. A bit fiddly. So when you get a layer of vinyl, I did one with vinyl, it took me ages to turn it through. If you are using a different fabric front and back, do remember to change your bobbin and top thread accordingly so it matches, of course, and that goes throughout the bag, especially at the end when we top stitch. Get my little pokey tool in there, which is not pointy. We don't want any holes. I'm actually going to go and press this as well before we top stitch it, so it does lie nice and flat. Oh, there's loads in there, yeah. Oh, there we go. There. Oh. Breathe. Ah, lovely. There. Right, so I'll just go and press that and then we'll top stitch it. There we go. I pressed that nice and flat. So now I'm going to top stitch it around all 4 sides, actually, just 3mm or 1/8 inch from the edge. So that edge is still raw, that's fine. We're going to turn it under afterwards. So just stitch all the way around, and I've swapped out for a zipper foot on my machine just so it's easier to get close to it. There we go, all top stitched, that's fine. So now we're ready to make the pocket to go with that. So put that to one side for now and grab your lining piece B. So as I said before, this is slightly longer than lining piece A, so don't get too confused. Get rid of those labels now. We'll be needing our 2 remaining inner pocket linings too, and just a tip for you here, if you are going to be carrying around a laptop inside the bag, you can actually put fusible fleece inside the pocket pieces themselves. I would cut them out of the seam allowances and the corners just to keep it nice and neat and not building up too much bulk. So before we put those on, tape B, and we're going to slice that again. So I'll grab my rule and my rotary cutter. So with your curved edges towards the bottom again, we want to cut that 4 inches or 10 centimeters down again from the top. So the same as you did with the other. So curved edges to bottom, 4-inch slice or 10 centimeter slice from the top. I'll have to turn it, I can't do it that way. Can't do it that way either. Just changed this knife blade. Should have seen me yesterday hacking at things, thinking, time to change. I think we all do that, don't we? Make it last as long as possible. So we're sliced across the piece, so that leaves us room to put our pocket in. So I'm going to lay the upper lining panel to the side again. So we've got our upper and lower lining panel. Place that upper one to the side. We've got our lower lining panel right side up. Let's mark the centre point on this. And I'm going to grab my first inner pocket lining piece H. Get rid of that label now. And mark the centre of that as well. And then I'm going to place it face down on top of my lower body panel. Lining panel. Match up those centre notches. Make sure you've got the same space on either side and just clip that in place. No zip in this one, so it's a lot quicker. And I'm going to stitch across the whole top edge with a 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. I've got enough stitch the whole way across because it gives me a nice line to fold to anyway. And I'm going to take that to the ironing board, I'm going to open up the pocket and press that upwards, so the seam allowances are going towards the pocket. You'll see that bottom panel remains flat. The seam allowances on the pocket are folded up this way. So I'll press that in place. So there we are, beautifully pressed, and now we are ready to apply the female part of the magnetic clasp. So I'm going to add this part centrally on the lower lining panel, 2.5 centimetres or 1 inch down from that pocket seam. While I was at the ironing board, I did add a little circle of Decovil to strengthen it on the back there. Let's add that in. Oh, those people drilling driving me mad. They haven't stopped all day. This is when your metal ruler comes in handy. Much better than your fingers. And you can just place that to one side for a moment and grab your upper lining panel and your second pocket bag. Sorry, I call it a pocket bag. We used to call them pocket bags in industry. So take your upper lining panel and lay it right side up. So mark the centre point on the long edge. However you want to do it, and the centre point of your pocket, you can just fold it. Look at that franking facing. Let's put it to the bottom. I shouldn't do it in videos really, should I? Okay, so we'll just mark that. So we're going to flip that over onto there and match the centres. Clip it in place. So we've got right sides together. Oops. Pocket bag and upper lining. Let's turn it over so you can see it. So the upper lining extends out beyond the pocket itself. So I'm now going to stitch across there with a 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance again. So take that to the sewing machine, take that to the ironing board and press again. I'll just finger press this one for now. So again, we want the seam allowances towards the pocket. Then I'm going to grab my lower lining panel and just put those so they are next to each other. Let me make a bit of space. So they're next to each other. So you get your pocket bags to the pocket panels to the bottom. I've got to stop calling them pocket bags. And I want to take those to the ironing board and press up a 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch hem on both of those pocket panels. So there we go, that's my hem pressed up on both of my pocket pieces. So lay those with the pocket pieces facing towards you, and then we're going to flip the lower lining panel onto the upper lining panel. So we're going to match up the pocket bags, pocket panels. I'm going to line up those edges here. This is the important part, exactly at these corners. Go, clip them in place. So seam allowances are flattened out here at the top. Those stay folded in on the bottom of the pocket. And then we're going to stitch an L shape up the pocket and then just along the side here on the 1 centimetre mark, and you can just follow that stitching that you already made. Gives a good guide. And do it on both sides. Yeah, so you can see we've just stitched up and across. There's a bit of a crease in there. Up and across, and then if we take the lower panel, the longer piece, and fold it down to conceal that pocket, you'll see we've created our lovely large pocket inside there, really nice and easily. Trim. Did I trim? I don't think I did. I won't sleep tonight. There we go. So that's done. So take that to the ironing board and give it a nice press again. And then we're going to top stitch in here. So we're going to top stitch the top of this pocket. You can't do it beforehand. So we're going to top stitch the top of that, and then we'll deal with the sides. So you just put a couple of clips in. Pretend I've pressed that. I've just finger pressed it at the moment. Open it up and you can top stitch it from inside there. So just 3mm or 1/8 of an inch from the edge. Trim that. You can see you can get quite close into the edge there. Trim the front. I've got a nest on that side. That was the problem with stitching from behind. If you didn't want to stitch from behind, you can do it from the front and just work on the free arm of your machine, and then you'll be able to get in there. And then again, we just want to stitch a box across the corners. We've caught in all the pockets at the sides here, but just to strengthen the sides really. So literally a box about 1 inch or 2.5 centimetre box, just meeting up with the edge of that pocket all the way around, and then that'll complete your top stitching across there too. Nobody's really ever going to stick the head in your bag and see if your corners are exactly matching, so I wouldn't worry too much about them being spot on for the millimetre. It's just making sure everything's secure really. And there's our boxes sewn on each side. Just trim that, and that will keep those pockets nice and strong on the sides, especially if you're carrying something heavy on there. And now we're ready to apply the pocket tab. So grab that pocket tab again and press under 1 centimetre towards the back, or towards the clasp, 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch. I'll finger press it here just for speed. Put a clip on it. Grab a pin because I know I'll need it, and then just snap that onto the clasp of the body lining, and then you can position it exactly, perfectly across the top there. Just put a pin in it, and now I can go to the machine and stitch a box just beyond the 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, just to conceal that raw edge underneath. You've got plenty of space there. You can do a box, you can do a cross shape, anything that you'd like. And there we go, that's our second lining piece complete. Beautiful. You deserve a brew. And then we're ready to move on to our front and back panels. Put that to one side. That was an extra break, by the way, not your main break. Okay, so we're ready to prepare our front and back panels, and that's outer and lining. Now, just before you start, before you remove your pattern pieces, do remember to make the little notches in the side, because it'll save you doing it later. So it's top and bottom, centre, and there's 3 inches down on the sides. But they're on the pattern pieces for you, so if you do that before you remove your pattern pieces, that's great. So grab pieces A in outer fabric, and your zip edge overlay pieces P. I'll just take one of those for now, put that to the side. And I'm going to add the first zip edge overlay to the top edge, 1.5 centimetres or 5/8 of an inch down from the top straight edge on both panels. So let me just measure that. I'm going to wing this really today. You could add a piece of double-sided tape underneath there, which would make it a lot easier for stitching. But as I'm doing it for speed today, I shall just wing it. And I'm going to stitch that on all the way around, 3mm or 1/8 of an inch from the edge, just a big square all the way around. When you're doing things like this, you remember your blind hemming foot is always brilliant for keeping a nice close edge, nice and straight to the edge of the fabric. Should have put it on. In fact, you could increase your stitch length here as well, because you were on a nice non-frame fabric, and it usually takes a longer stitch length quite nicely and looks more decorative. That's one done. That's fine. Let's do the other. So top edge, move that out the way. Top straight edge, 1.5 centimetres or 5/8 of an inch down. And you can decorate these fronts however you want. I mean, it doesn't have to be this strip, it can be anything. I just like the sort of the narrower width on the top and then the wider width on the pocket for the overlays, but decorate it any way you want. You don't need overlay strips at all, they are completely optional. It bobbins that. I went a bit wavy on that one. I really should have used a guide or taken my time. It doesn't help that I'm sitting at an angle trying to look over my shoulder.
Got our 2 fronts decorated there, ready for the next stage. Now gather together your outer front, outer back and both completed lining panels. I'm going to notch them. You might have already done this, hopefully you have, but if you haven't, you want to make those notches from your paper pattern piece, top and bottom centre and at the sides here, and that is 3 inches or 7.5 centimetres down on the sides. But it's easier just to put your paper pattern piece on and do it. You do that with all 4 pieces if you haven't already done it. Lining as well. Okay, and then on all 4 pieces we also want to, I'll just show you on one. You take all 4 pieces to the ironing board and we're just going to turn a hem just on this top edge. So not the curved bottom edge, it's just on the 2 sides. So we want to turn 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch in, just on the top to 4 inches, so just below where you've got that snip. So I won't be able to press this because it's waterproof canvas, so I'll just clip it in. So just make sure it's an even hem on everything. So both outers and both linings, and that's really important. So these I'll clip, and then the lining I will press. So it's only the top edge, just to literally just below where you snipped. That 3-inch notch, so make it 4 inches long, this little hem. We're not stitching it down, it's literally just folded in for now. And then I'll go to the ironing board and I'll press them in on the lining pieces and clip them in place too. So that's my lining panels done too. Edges turned in just at the top, and I've clipped those in place. So that's all 4 panels nicely complete. I can put all those to one side and I'm ready to start on my handles. Right, let's make our handles. Handles, as some people call them. Right, that's our pieces N. You might have fused ones if you're using fabric. Handles, you can use webbing if you prefer. In fact, if you're worried about bulk at the bottom of your sheen when you're stitching the bag together, webbing obviously is a lot less layers. You can not fuse the bottom section of your handles to reduce layers. It's literally just in the bottom where it fits into the bottom section of the bag is the only real bit that the layers are going to build up. But you should be alright really if you've got a reasonably powerful machine. If you haven't, use webbing, or you can just reduce layers by doing 2 layers, folding them into the centre and putting a little strip of something onto the top. Some I used webbing with a layer of cork on top, that looked nice. So lots of different ways of doing it. So this is waterproof canvas, obviously, so I don't need any interfacing. All we're going to do with the handles is we're going to fold them in half along the length. It's easier to see if you're using fabric because you can press it at the ironing board and then you can see it. As I'm not, I'll just do a little bit here. So you'll be able to see a crease in the middle. You want to then press the outsides of the handle in to meet that middle crease. I've got to clip it here because it's waterproof canvas, but if you do this at the ironing board on fabric, it will sit very nicely and behave itself. So there we go, so clip that. You can use double-sided tape, anything that helps. So go all the way along your piece. I'll do it, speed it up afterwards, and then once you've got all the way along, then fold it in half and clip it together, and that basically is your handle formed. If you are worried about bulk, or even if you're not, it's always nice to reduce a bulge. You can just open up the bottom section here just before you sew it together and just cut away some of that bulk inside. So I can reduce some of that straight away. Nobody's ever going to see inside that handle ever again once it's on, so we'll get rid of some of it. There we go, clip it back up together, nobody will ever, I'll just show you that, did you see that? And nobody will ever be any the wiser. Flip in place. Right, I'll just do that super speed. I am doing it at this speed, really. Okay, there we go. Make sure it isn't twisted because you've tried to do it too quick like I have. Double-sided tape is better, really. It's much neater. And then we're going to take that to the machine and we're going to stitch around it all the way around with 3mm or 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Just edge stitching all the way around. I just thought that out a little bit. I was mucking about far too quickly there. Right, I am going to put my blind hemming cut on the machine because I want to do it nicely. And I'm going to stitch all the way around all 4 sides. There we go, and then repeat with your second strap. So that's your straps done, brilliant. Let's move on to our back luggage sleeve. So take your 2 pieces eye, back luggage sleeve in lining and in outer, and we're just going to work on the outer to start with. Put the lining to one side. We'll take our zip with a 10-inch zip or longer, and we'll lay that face down with a puller to the left when closed, and just centre it so you've got a little bit of tape both sides. Clip it in place along that top short edge. So this will be the direction of your fabric if you're using a directional fabric. Because we're using a longer zip, we can pull it off to one side there. I have actually just put a bit of zigzag on there so I don't pull it off in the process. And then I'm going to grab my back luggage sleeve piece eye in lining fabric, and I'm going to lay that face down on top, lining up those short edges at the top. Line up everything and clip it in place along that top zip edge. Change your machine for a zipper foot, which we've already done. And then I'm going to stitch across the whole top zip edge with a 6mm or 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Then turn that so that you've got the wrong sides facing and give it a press. I'll just finger press it for the time being. And then we can top stitch that zip edge close to the fold. I should be pressing it really. So lay with the outer fabric uppermost and then lift the bottom just of the outer and bring it up to reach the free edge of the zip tape and clip in place. Then flip the whole unit over, lift the lining and match that short free edge with the free edge of the zip tape. Make sure you line up the sides together. And then again we'll go and we'll stitch across that whole top zip edge with a 1/4 inch or 6mm seam allowance. You've got your zip sandwiched in the middle there. trim up, and now I definitely will go and press this. Let's just turn that through. Don't lose your zip puller off the end, obviously. How many times have we all done that? So turn it so it is like outer on the outside and the lining on the inside. Hang on to that zip puller. I did zigzag that end. You want that end open actually. I did zigzag it, but I've had to open it because you do need it open to top stitch it now. So I'll set that to the ironing board and I'll give that a press. Okay, I'm all pressed there. So we just want to top stitch that second side now. So open the zip as much as you can without losing the puller off the side, and you can just get into there and top stitch that side now. Zip up 2/3 of the way, and then just make sure that pocket is nice and flat inside, and roll your zip round so it is about 2 centimeters or 3/4 of an inch from the top edge there. So we're going to clip that in place. Make sure that zips together, and then we're going to stitch down both sides just close to the edge. We're just basting it at the moment, we just want to hold it in place. Trim off the zip ends. And you can stitch the top and bottom close to the edge as well. I mean, you could go around it in a full square when you've got it in the machine, but you just go back now and stitch it close to the edge, top and bottom, just to give it a nice finish. That is complete and ready to attach to our back panel. So we're ready to apply our completed luggage sleeve to one of our outer panels. So take one of your outer panels in outer fabric, that's piece A, lay it right side uppermost, and then we're going to lay our completed pocket on top, right side up, and we're going to position it 2.5 inches up from the bottom edge, and that's central across the width. It does look a little bit low at the moment, that's fine. Remember, that's going to turn over at the top of the bag and form the flap at the top, so it will be central when you finish, so don't be tempted to move it up any. That is absolutely perfect where it is. So what we're going to do now is we're going to stitch up those two sides. We're just basting them at present because our straps are going to go over the top to disguise those raw edges. So just baste, just close to the edge again, 3mm, 1/8 of an inch, just to hold it in place. You can pin that in place, or you can use a little bit of double-sided tape as I've done here, just to hold it there while you get it to the machine, because it doesn't like clips in that position, obviously. Just to mention, if you don't want it as a luggage sleeve, as you want it as a full pocket, an extra pocket so you can put your hand in behind, you can stitch across the bottom as well, and that'll give you an extra pocket rather than a luggage sleeve. Trim up any loose edges, any little threads. We don't want anything sticking out the sides of our handles once we attach them. So there we are, now we're ready to attach our first handle. So grab one of your handles and make sure it is not twisted at the top. So that way or that way, just make sure there's no twist in it anywhere. So we're going to attach that with the short raw edges butted up against the bottom of the bag panel, and 9.5 centimeters or 3¼ inches in from the sides. And then you'll find that that will cover the raw edges of your pocket as well. Now it's much easier to use a bit of double-sided tape here, so I'll do that in a moment. I'll just show you here first. 9.5. Make sure it isn't twisted. It would not be the first time or the last that I do it twisted, I'm sure. Clip that in place, and then you need to make sure that's 9.5 centimetres or 3 3/4 inches in all the way up, so make sure it's nice and tidy. So I'll add a couple of bits of double-sided tape just to be sure here. Don't add your double-sided tape any further up than your pocket because it will show or stick it on the pocket. That's even easier. It's not a room to get my ruler in. There you go. Nice and straight, and a bit on there. So that should be nice and parallel to each other. The sides of your pocket are going to be just about in the middle there, so they're well disguised. Doesn't matter if they're fractioning one way or another, as long as they're inside and well out of the way. And then we're going to stitch up both sides to secure. So I just want to make a line where I'm going to stop stitching, and on this side we're going to just be a hair's fraction over the top of the pocket. So let me see what measurement that was. 20 centimetres or 8 inches up from the bottom on each handle. So it is literally just on the top of that pocket, so you can draw a line. This side's easy to assess because it is basically just where the top of the pocket is, but you don't have that to follow when we do the other side. So I'm going to carefully edge stitch up each side, come up the top, stitch across the bottom, come up the top, across the line I've just drawn, and then back down to the other. And you can either choose to stitch right on top of the stitch line you've got on your handles already, or you can stitch just inside to make more of a feature of it. And then we can put a little cross in the top here. I would put a box and a little cross just in stitching, just to make that sure that's really secure at the top there. Okay, great. So now I'm going to stitch a box shape here. So you can either go over a whole box again and then do a cross in the middle, but I find it easier. You've already gone around the top, so I find it easier to just, let me get this right, start at the top corner, down, across, and back up again. And it gives you that same appearance. Another tip here is if you're trying to aim at a point that's on the diagonal, look at where you're going to rather than looking at your needle, and focus on where at the point you want to reach, and look at that, because that actually helps quite a lot. I'm going to trim up, and then we'll do the second one. So our box is done, and that's our first side complete, so we're ready to attach our handles to the second side. So lay that to one side for now. Grab your second panel, that's your outer body panel A, and grab your strap. So we haven't got a pocket going on this side yet, we put that on after this, the strap on this side. I'm going to do the same thing again. So 9.5 centimetres or 3 1/4 inches in from each side. Trim up, and then we are ready to apply our pocket to this outer front. So place your outer front panel to one side, and we're going to work on our outer front pocket, ready to put it on top. So grab your 2 outer front pocket pieces C. So you should have one in lining and one in outer. Now if you do want to add a badge to that, just take the outer and singly add it to the front. I mean you can add it anywhere within here, just make sure you steer clear of the edges so you've got plenty of room for your seams. I added mine on some of my bags 6 centimetres or 1 1/4 inches up and in from the side, so it's kind of here. Also looks nice in the middle, but you're going to stitch, it depends whether you're using a magnetic clasp or stitching. So if you're going to divide your pocket, don't put a badge in the middle. If you're not, and you're going to use magnetic clasp, then you can add it to the middle, but I quite liked it there, and you're not having to worry about where you put in your clasp or whether you're dividing your pocket at all. So take 2 pieces, we're going to add the lining and on top, so right sides together, lining and outer, and you've got your curved edges to the bottom, which is the bottom of the bag, and then a straight top edge, just clip across there. And I'm going to stitch across that with a 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So straight all the way across the top. Trim up, and I'm going to flip that so wrong sides are together. And take that to the ironing board and press across there. So that's my pocket pressed nicely. I'm now going to grab my front overlay strip, my front pocket overlay strip, and place that face up on top, so right side uppermost. I'm going to clip the bottom edges of my pocket just so they don't move for the moment. I've got the 2 layers there, and I'm going to lay that very close to the top folded edge and clip it in place. Now the reason I'm adding that afterwards, you can add it before you construct the pocket and then have it turning, but then you're going to have 2 layers of the overlay strip goes into your side seams, but also this stabilise, because you're going to stitch through both layers together, it's going to stabilise that top pocket edge and make it much firmer and more stable. So that's why I like to do it this way. So I'm laying it just fractionally below, just 1/8 of an inch, 3 millimeters below the top folded edge. I've put a bit of double-sided tape on this one to make my life easier, but you can just clip it. So this is just decoration, so you can put a wider strip on it, no strip at all, it's literally whatever you want it to be. So I'm now going to stitch 1/8 of an inch, 3 millimeters from the edge all the way around that strip. This pocket, it's a nice pocket to decorate actually. You can put you know, a plique on it or a print or anything you want. So we're now ready to put that onto the outer front. So grab that outer front again, outer front A, that's the one that doesn't have the luggage sleeve on it. You've got no pocket on there at the moment. I'm going to lay that on top, so right side uppermost, you've got your lining underneath, and line it up all the way around those nice bottom curved edges. So make sure your little, should we call those their pesky side hems? Make sure those pesky side hems are open. They're only folded above there. I mean, if you need to take out a clip, take out a clip for the time being. And now I'm just going to baste just around the outside of the pocket there within the seam allowance, so we're not going to see that afterwards, just so everything's attached together. So there we go. I do mention in the instructions that you can add a clasp to this if you prefer, but I'm just going to stitch a line of stitching through the centre just to divide the pocket in 2. You do need something in the centre there because it's such a big pocket, you don't want it drooping in use or anything. So I'm just going to fold that in half and stitch a line of stitching down the centre just to divide the pocket. So straight up the middle, stop at the top of the pocket. You can add an extra line of stitching or a box there in the centre if you want to, just to strengthen it. Might have been fine. So that's our front outer panel finished. Again, let's lay that to one side and we can start on our gusset. So let's start the pockets for our gussets. Both of these pockets are completely optional. You don't have to put them on at all. It's just if you want them. So let's grab our glasses pocket pieces L. I'm going to lay those right sides together. I'm going to clip them in place. So I'm just going to stitch across long top and bottom edges with a 1 cm or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm leaving those shorter sides open. Trim up, and then I'm going to turn that through. Anything like these pockets, you can, of course, on anything, trim down the corners before you turn if you're worried about bulk on your machine. They're going to disappear inside your pocket. So let's turn that through. There we are. I'm going to take that to the ironing board and just press that nicely. There we go, beautifully pressed. And now I'm going to top stitch the top edge. It's the same both sides unless you're using a directional print. If you're using a directional print, this is the top and that's what we're going to top stitch. And we'll just do that 3 mil or 1/8 of an inch from the top edge. And of course you can make any of these pockets in feature prints. I've done my pockets in a different colour to my lining fabric just so you can see them, but obviously you can make them in any feature prints you want. I'm going to grab my gusset lining, so that's the lining piece, not the outer, and that's piece G in lining fabric. And I'm going to put that, so I'm just looking at one of the short edges and I'm going to position this pocket with the top stitching facing towards the top and the short edge of the gusset. I'm going to position that 9 centimetres or 3.5 inches down from the top short edge of the gusset. So the pocket is right side up and the edge stitching is facing towards the short edge of the gusset. Clip that in place. Now I'll just stitch down the sides, the bottom and back up that side, leaving that top edge open to form a pocket, and I'll stitch 3 mil or 1/8 of an inch from the edge on those 3 sides. Obviously you can add extra lines of stitching again as we did on the previous pocket. That always looks nice. I'll probably do that on my water bottle sleeve because it's more of a feature on there. So trim, and that's that pocket complete. The sides will go into the side seams, so you'll just see that line of stitching and the top line of stitching. That's a nice handy place to keep your glasses or anything, any small items in the gusset on the side of the bag. And now we're going to move to the other side of the gusset and we're going to make the water bottle pocket for this side. So it's like a water bottle sleeve. Let me just push that to one side for a second and grab my water bottle sleeve pieces. There we go, that's pieces M in lining. And I'm going to place those right sides together. I'm going to do exactly the same again. Up in place. And I'm going to stitch top and bottom again, leaving the sides open. Trim if you wish. And we'll do exactly the same thing here. We'll just turn it through, press and top stitch. And you can make that pocket as long as you want to. This holds a standard 500 milliliter water bottle. So if you wanted to hold a bigger bottle or a flask or anything like that, just make the pocket longer. Look, I've got a cut on there, never mind. Right, so I'll press that nicely in place and then we'll top stitch that as well. I often use my ruler in there just to get a nice straight edge, a metal ruler of course. So same again, we're just going to top stitch the top edge, and on this one, because it's a bit more, you see it a bit more, I'm going to put a few lines of top stitching on there just to make it stand out a little bit. Very pretty. So do as many as you want, cover the whole thing, use decorative stitches. The world is your lobster. And then I'm going to stitch that onto the other end of my gusset. So grab your gusset piece again, so this is the gusset lining, not the outer, and move it around. You've got the pocket on that end already, just swivel it round so you've got the other end, and place this pocket on top. And this one is going to be positioned 9 centimetres, 3.5 inches down. Now slightly different on this one is we're just going to attach the sides. So attach one side, clip in place, and then we're just going to bring that loop up so we can attach the other side at the same distance down, 9 centimetres or 3.5 inches. Clip in place, and then just base down the sides within the seam allowance, i.e. less than 3/8 of an inch or 1 centimetre. So there you go, that leaves a nice loop for us to drop our water bottle into once it's in the bag. So you can see now if you make it bigger it'll hold something larger, but that's plenty big enough for a 500ml sort of personal use water bottle. So that is our gusset lining complete. What I am going to do is add a pin just the middle of that so that it doesn't get caught up in my side seams. I want all that extra in the middle, so just add a pin or 2 pins just to keep it away. And of course remember to take those out before you turn it through, because you're bound to get them stuck in your finger, and that's going to keep that away from the side seams when I stitch it. Trimmity trim. So that's our gusset lining complete. So now we're ready to start on the outer gusset, but before we do that I want to mark the centre points of both the outer and the lining. So all I'm going to do is fold them in half and make a notch or a mark or a snip. So when I say make a snip, I mean a small snip within the seam allowance, or a small notch. So fold it in half and make a little notch, but make sure that notch stays small within the seam allowance. You don't want to see that afterwards. So we'll do the same on the lining fabric. So we've got our centre points marked on both of those. So we'll drop those to one side for the moment. And we're ready to start on the outer, but we want to add the flaps, or make the flaps first for the outer. So grab your side flap pieces D, and you should have 2 in outer and 2 in lining. So we want to place these with right sides together. So 1 outer with 1 lining. So I'll place an outer right sides together with a lining piece and clip in place. I'll do one first and I'll whiz through the other. Just make sure it's all lined up nicely. That isn't. Make sure it's nice and flat. And I'm going to stitch around 3 sides of that. So I'm going to leave the straight top edge open, but I'm going to stitch around both sides and the curved bottom edge with a 3 centimetre, with a 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now before I do that, I just want to mention if you worry about curves and going round curves, it's much easier to draw it on first. You know, just scribble it on. It's easier to follow a line than it is to follow the edge of the fabric with your foot, because you're looking at the foot before it goes, or before the fabric actually stitches it. So the curve isn't exactly the same spot as the front of your foot. It's at the point where your needle is, so it's easier to draw those curves on. I've just switched my stitch length down as well, because that's another thing. The smaller the stitch length, the easier it is to manoeuvre around a curve, because if you imagine a really long stitch, well, if it was really long it'd be really jerky going around, but you can imagine you can manoeuvre it in smaller increments with a smaller stitch. So I'm going to clip the curves so it turns nicely. And then I'm going to reduce those seam allowances by half. It's really where the curve is that you want the lower seam allowance, because the bulk all sort of builds up. It's not big in this little flap, but you know, as you get onto other projects, if you've got a curve like that, then you don't want much fabric in there because it's all pushing in towards the centre of the curve. Turn that through. And I'll take that to the ironing board and give it a press. I'll just stitch the other flap first, so we've got both ready. So right sides together. Okay, now go and press those babies nice and flat. There we go. So I have pressed those nicely, and now I'm going to top stitch all the way around. So your top edge is still raw, that's fine, and the rest is nice and finished off nicely. Nice and finished nicely. That's a lot of nices. So I'm just going to stitch around the outside, but I will stitch the top as well. It just helps keep everything in position. So just 3mm or 1/8 of an inch from the edge all the way around. There's one, and I'll do the other. There we are, there's our flaps complete. So now we're going to place those or position them on our gusset. So let's grab our gusset outer piece. So your outer gusset, in outer fabric, your lining's finished. So place that so you've got one of the short edges facing you. And we're going to lay one of the flaps right side down. So you've got outer facing outer. That's your lining you're going to see on the top. And clip that in place centrally, so you'll have a gap at each side. Make sure that gap's equal. You can measure it if you're worried about it. And then swivel it round and clip the other flap onto the other end of the gusset. Right sides down, right sides together, or outers together. You'll see your lining on top of the flap. Clip in place. And then we're just going to baste that within the seam allowance. So less than the seam allowance, just a few mil. That's our flaps basted to both sides of the gusset. So this is the point, if you are going to add a crossbody strap to your bag, we need to add the carrier. So the crossbody strap is completely optional. You don't have to add it if you don't want to. But if you are adding it, you need to add the carrier at this point. So grab your crossbody strap carrier in webbing, which is piece T. Don't get it confused with the strap itself, because that's longer. So this is piece T. And we want 2 1.5 inch D-rings. I'm going to thread one D-ring onto one end of my webbing and just pull over 3 inches of webbing. Just do want a good length because we want a nice strong seal within there. So 3 inches, and 3 inches in metric of course is 7.5 centimetres. So clip that in place. We'll do the same on the other end. So So just make sure that you are folding your webbing over to the same side. So D-ring on, 3 inches pulled over, and clip that in place. So we've got our 2 D-rings within there. So as I say, make sure you've pulled it over to the same side of your webbing on both sides. Now we're going to lay out our outer gusset flat. Can I get it all in here? Let's see. May not be able to. You'll get the gist, I'm sure. I'll get it there eventually. There we go. Right, okay. And then take your webbing and lay it. So it's going to be face down. So where you have the raw edges of the webbing underneath, you want those face down on the fabric of the outer. So they're concealed underneath now. So we've centralised it across the piece there and across the length. Don't worry too much if you're not exact to the few millimetres underneath your flaps. Those flaps are going to be upwards afterwards, so it's going to be well out of the way. So as long as they're sitting around about where the flaps, or just below where the flaps finish, that's fine. The easiest way, you can pin it obviously, but the easiest way really is a bit of double-sided tape here. So I'll just whack a bit along there. I shouldn't really put pins in waterproof canvas, so I won't. I'm obviously having a good day, not a naughty day. And now I'm going to stitch that 3mm or 1/8 of an inch from the edge all the way around. When you get to the D-rings, just stitch underneath as close as you can. If you do put a zipper foot on, you'll be able to get closer to those, but it's not essential because we've got that 3 inches in there. As long as you get as close as you can, and then we'll stitch a box or a cross across this end piece just to secure that webbing underneath nice and firmly. You could also add a rivet to the end as well if you wanted to, just for a bit of extra bling. Yeah, so that's attached, and now do a square up close to the D-ring. So we're ready to add our strengthening to the bottom. So we're going to add our gusset overlay piece Q. So grab that, and also grab your Decovil bag bottom R. Now I've already fused my Decovil bag bottom to the centre of that, and you'll see there's a space all the way around, a border without the Decovil Heavy, and that's so it doesn't get in the seams. So we're just strengthening the bottom of the gusset itself. So I'll fuse that on centrally, get rid of those. And I just want to mark the centres of that bag bottom. Little snip, and then I can match those centre points up with the centre points on my gusset. So lay out your gusset flat again and find your centre notches or your centre points, and we'll lay the gusset overlay on top, matching up those centre points, and clip in place. And then just clip the sides so it's nice and straight along the edge of both sides. So that is right way up, we're not turning anything through here. And now I'm going to take that to the machine. I'm going to stitch 3 millimetres or 1/8 of an inch from the panel all the way around it. And then after that you can do whatever sort of decorative stitches you want on that base. You can add bag feet as well. I won't add bag feet today because obviously we're short on time because it's such a long pattern. They're easy to add. I added 6 in some of my bags, but you can also add stitch lines, and lots of stitch lines, crosses, lots of lines, diagonal lines, whatever you want to decorate it. It's quite a fun place to decorate that. So I'll stitch outside first, and then I'll just do another line of stitching just inside that today. So probably another 2.5 or inch in again. So that's just attached it around the outside, and now I'll do another row just inside that, probably 1 inch in. In fact, I'll just use my foot so I can gauge it better. There we go, trim up. Looks really pretty on there. So as I say, if you want to add bag feet, add them now before we go any further. And then we're ready to assemble the gusset. So grab your lining piece, your gusset lining piece. And we're going to open that out as well and lay that right side down directly on top of our outer gusset. I'm going to clip, I can't say it, and I'm going to clip it in place at top and bottom. So just the short edges for now at top and bottom. Make sure you measure exactly, they both measure exactly the same. So clip at top, make sure it's all lined up beautifully, make sure everything is the same length. Open out and clip at bottom. Yeah, I've got a few pockets in there, so you might have to flatten it down. So your flaps are tucked inside. You see those? The flaps are down and tucked inside. They're not stuck up. And now I'm going to stitch along the 2 short edges of the gusset with a 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And we're leaving both long edges open at the moment. That's one short edge, stitch the other short edge. So that's our short edges seamed. I'm going to turn that through so we have right sides to the outside and wrong sides facing inside, wrong sides together. And then take that to the ironing board and give that a press. If I didn't mention before, by the way, don't alter the length of the gusset and don't alter the shape of the curves on the bag because they're relative to each other and things wouldn't fit. If you make the curves smaller or go square, then your gusset will sit too far down on the bag and you'll have gaps at the side, so they are directly related to one another. So let me press that. So that's our gusset beautifully pressed. So I'm just going to clip the edges now. I'm going to clip everything together and we're going to baste the sides. Don't be tempted to top stitch the top edges yet, by the way. We do that later, right at the end when everything comes together. I know it's tempting. I always want to top stitch everything. Okay, so make sure everything's sat beautifully flat. We don't want any wrinkles anywhere. Just check on both sides, particularly that top edge we want to be very pretty. And then I'm going to take that to the machine and I'm going to baste down each of the long edges just a few millimetres from the edge, less than the seam allowance. We don't want to see it afterwards, it's literally just to baste it in place. There we go, trim everything up. Make sure you've caught in the lining everywhere. Get any loose threads off. So we're now using that as one solid unit, and I know you're going to say, well, how are we going to bag the bag out and turn it through? But we turn it through twice. So, and that's how we get a really nicely fitted lining. So that's our gusset complete. So we can place that to one side now, and we're ready to install the main zip on the bag. So we're ready to attach our main zip, and actually it's quite an easy zip insertion method this, so don't worry too much about it. So I've grabbed my zip, it's a lot longer than the body. I've zigzag stitched, or I've stitched a piece of fabric on the end of both sides just so I don't lose my zip tabs, my zip pullers. Quite important in this one because you could easily lose them as you're flipping it over a couple of times, so do stitch the ends closed. We're going to snip those off at the end anyway and make it shorter, so don't worry about the ends being a bit messy. Just make sure you've got plenty of length on your zip. So that's 26 inches, but longer. The longer it is, the easier it is. So we're going to take our front body panel first. So just our front outer. Let's lay that flat. I'll put these to one side for the moment. I'm going to lay my zip centrally right side down. So just find your centre point of your zip. Push that bag handle down out of the way. Let's clip it for now, just so it's not causing bother. So zip with puller to the left when closed. Find the central point and just clip it to the top edge of the bag. Now start clipping all the way along. What I want you to double check is that those pesky little side hems are turned and they're folded in where they should be. I'll show you that in a minute. So clip all the way along. There we go. So you can see we've got lots of zip tail on both sides. When you turn that over, you can see those hems are turned in. They need to be turned in, and that's why we've got them clipped at the moment. This is where it comes into play. So we're going to baste along, so do it from this side to the wrong side so you can see what you're doing. We're going to baste along the top edges of that zip. We're going to be using a 6mm or 1/4 inch seam allowance to attach the zip, so if you just go slightly smaller for basting it on, slightly closer to the top edge, and don't run your stitching over onto the zip tape at the end because that will be visible after the bag is made. So just start a stitch in. We'll be top stitching the bag on the sides later on anyway, so don't worry too much about not getting right the very last stitch to the end. Just make sure those folded hems are nicely firm and attached. So let's stitch along that top edge. So you can see I've caught in those hems, so they're firmly in place now, but I haven't stitched over onto the zip tape. So flip that right side uppermost again and grab your lining piece with the zip pocket. I'm going to lay that piece down on top so we've got right sides together. Line it up with the edge of the zip tape, so it's the same edge that you've just stitched. And make sure your little folds are lying in the same place, your little side hems, and clip all the way across the top. You can match centre points again. Make sure those hems are in the same place, your pesky hems. Everything's in line, so we're now going to stitch across there with a 6mm or 1/4 inch seam allowance, and again don't stitch onto your zip tape. You can take these extra clips off now if you want to. They do get in the way, but we don't need them now. So if I didn't mention as well, your zip, you can have your zip puller off to one side, so you don't need to stop and move your zip when you're halfway through stitching your zip on. Use an awl if it helps. This waterproof canvas is quite sticky. Make sure those hems are folded in when you get to the ends, and don't stitch over onto the tape. Take any spare clips off now. I'm going to turn that over so we are wrong sides together, and then we can take that to the ironing board and give that a good press at that top seam edge, or that top zip edge. So there we are, nicely pressed. Not too bad to attach, was it? That's your first side done. I said it was an easy one. So place right side or outer side uppermost, and let's grab our outer back panel. So again, it's your outer fabric, not your lining fabric. Pull that handle down out of the way. I'm going to flip that right side down onto the other. So we've got right sides facing the outer fabrics. I'm going to line that up with the free edge of the zip tape. So line up those sides, make sure they're in the same place, but we're now on the free edge of the zip tape. So it's attached to the right side of the zip. I'll show you again in a minute. We're attaching it to the right side of the zip, and we're clipping it right side of fabric to right side of zip. Let me show you that in a second. You can see we're attaching it to this top free edge of the zip. So clip all the way along and make sure your folds, your pesky hems, are all lining up in the same place and they're still folded in towards the centre. Match up your centre points, clip all the way along, and then just as we did with the other side, we're going to baste along this zip edge. So let's take that to the machine, and we're basting along that zip edge again, making sure those hems are turned inwards and they stay in place, and we're not stitching onto the zip tape. I'm going to do it from this side, just because you better do it from that side because you can see your hems, but this waterproof canvas is a little bit stretchy, so I'm going to do it from the lining side and just keep an eye out for where my folded hems are lying. Very carefully. Take those clips out. So you can see that's now basted on, hems folded inwards. Trim, trim. I'm going to flip the unit over so that you're looking at the lining. So that's the lining panel we've already attached. Got our two outers under there, right sides together. And I'm going to grab my last lining piece, which is the lining with the tab pocket. I'm going to lay that face down on top, and I'm going to match the long straight edge of that lining piece with the free edge that we just stitched of the zip tape. So at the moment that's just got one layer of outer attached to it. So face down, right sides together, lining up that top zip edge and clip in place. Again, match those folds on the sides everywhere. You can take out these clips on the side now anyway, don't need those. Match centres. So I'll take that to the machine and stitch all the way across there with my 6mm or 1/4 inch seam allowance, keeping these side hems turned inwards and not stitching past them onto the tape. trim up, and once again I'm going to turn that over so we're wrong sides together. Just have a look at it. It's fine there. Fine there. And then we'll take that to the ironing board and give that a final press. No top stitching. We're not top stitching until the very end. I know you're dying to top stitch. I'm dying to top stitch too, but don't do it. Let me press that. So there we go, there's our bag coming together nicely. You can see the zip nicely folded at the top and the bag's coming into a nice shape already. So nearly finished, hope it's looking good. Back and front. So I think this is probably the perfect place to go for a long dinner break. This pattern is longer than those I normally do. I need you to do a tea break in them, but I don't think a tea break is quite sufficient for this one. So have a nice long dinner break, or even have a sleep, go to bed and come back fresh in the morning. No wine with dinner, of course. Now I know this is a super long pattern and we definitely need some sustenance. So does Bilbo. So it's time to get some proper grub and a decent break. So me and Bilbo here are going to check out what I've got in my picnic basket today. Hopefully keep us going for the night. Yeah, help yourself, love. I did say no wine, didn't I? Well, it's not wine. Anybody got a tin opener? Sit down. Sit. Sit. Good boy. Gotta love him. I've just moved my machine out of the way for a moment because we need a bit of space here to show you how to do this. It's a big bag, I don't normally need this much space. So make sure you've snipped all your threads, make sure that your notches are visible, so you can see them in top and bottom centre, and this little 3-inch mark on the side, whatever that was in centimetres, I'll write it on, 7.5 centimetres down from the top. So make sure they're all visible to you. We're going to work just on this front panel to start with. So we've got 4 layers, we've got 2 outers and 2 linings. We just want to work on the front, so flip the other 3 panels up and out of the way. So just have the bag with the outer panel facing towards you. So up here we've got both linings and the outer. So we're literally just working on the front outer at the moment. So grab your completed gusset. Make sure that your centre marks are visible on there. I've just marked them again just so they are really, really clear. And we are going to match that centre mark of the gusset with the centre mark of the front panel. We've got the 2 pockets here. It doesn't really matter which way around they go unless you've got a preference. And then we're going to bring this side up and we're going to match this top corner of the gusset, so not the flap, the top corner of the gusset with our 3-inch snip or notch on the side of the bag. And clip that in place. And then we're going to do the same with this side. So grab this side of the gusset, I have to trim that. Oh, my OCD won't allow that. And I'm going to bring that edge, that corner of the gusset, not the flap, to the 3-inch snip mark on that side of the outer body. So I'll show you that a bit closer. Hopefully you can see that, and you can see how that will fall down and fall into place. But you can see the snip mark on the body. We've taken out all the clips on the side. The hem isn't folded under any longer. You no longer have a pesky hem, that is open. So we're just clipping that corner exactly where that 3-inch snip mark is on the side. And now we can work our way all the way around the bag, clipping gusset to body. So I would do the bottom first and the sides, leave the corners till last, because we might snip those depending on the weight or the heaviness of your fabric. But you can see it all fits in quite nicely. And then once you've done the sides and bottom, you can just see what you've got left on those corners there to work with. So I'm going to snip those because my fabric is pretty heavy, and we're going to snip into the gusset and less than the seam allowance. So probably half the seam allowance. We don't want to go too deep into that gusset because we want it there for strength. So it's just on those corner marks. Just on those corners. It's just to allow us some ease to get it around the corner. If you're using a lighter fabric, you might not even need to do it. So that's one. Get my clips. And then we can just clip it and ease it around the corner. So try and ensure that the edge of the fabric of the gusset is sitting on the edge of the fabric of the outer body all the time. Matching exactly. So you see that matches in perfectly. Now, if anything isn't quite matching, if you find that for some reason you've taken bigger or smaller seam allowances and that curve doesn't meet exactly, you do want to make sure this notch matches the top of your gusset. So take a smaller or larger curve, whatever sits in that curve on the corners. So make your amendments there rather than at this top point. So turn around to the other side. Let's do some snips there. Just remove that so you can see. And then ease it in using your clips. It really doesn't matter which way up these clips are. I'm always getting told off for using them upside down, not upside down, but do you know what? I can never really tell the difference unless you're using them as a measurement or something. Use them whichever way up you feel works. There we go, so that fits in nicely. So as long as you've taken the right seam allowances, it should fit really well. Okay, so that's done. We are now going to stitch around all the way around there from the first notch where we're joined here, just below the flap, all the way around to the second notch on the other side with a 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Bring my sewing machine back in. Now, some of the testers said they preferred to use a zipper foot for this. I didn't, because I was using a walking foot and I felt it held the fabric a lot tighter. But some of the testers felt, maybe they were using, I think some of them were using vinyl and they felt that it was quite heavy on the corners, and it allowed them a bit more access in there. So just use whatever works for you. So keeping those 3 layers up at the top, we're just stitching the gusset to the outer front. Trim. Okay, so you can see we're now attached there. If you flip it up and have a look, you can see how your bag is going to be looking. I have to put this camera, set this camera back a little more so you can see a wider angle on this. So that was stage 1 of attaching our gusset, and it's going to be in 4 stages. So that was stage 1, attaching the front outer. We're now going to attach the first lining. And I've written in the pattern, this is probably cardigan removal stage, because you'll get warmer with each stage we go through, because it's just a bit of a squish holding it all down and holding it all together. So remove your cardigan now if necessary. So now we're going to lift the outer back and the back lining. We want these out of the way, so I'm just kind of going to fold them up because we want to reach this very back lining that's sat here, and it's the one with the zip pocket in it. So we're folding one lining and one outer up in the middle, out of the way. So grab that back lining and pull it over to reach the bottom of your outer and facing that you've just stitched. And you'll see it should fit nice and neatly there. And your other two pieces are lying inside, rolled up out of the way. So I'm going to clip that all the way. Make sure that your gusset is nice and flat inside, that you've got no tucks or anything. I'm going to match up bottom centre point, and then my side points again, my notches. So it's the top of the gusset. I'm going to put my glasses on. So there's my notch on this side, and the top of my gusset and the notch on the other side are there. So I'm going to clip those in place. I would keep your zip closed for all of this process, because otherwise you can twist one of the fronts round. We don't want that. Sorry, I've just wrapped a bit of fabric around my zip end because I'm making a lot of noise with it, flipping it about. I haven't done anything to it. So turn it round, find your notch on this side of the lining, and make sure everything's squished inside from the other two layers. And we're finding the notch on the outer where we attached the gusset already. And that's there. So you've got your three major points, and now we can clip all the way around, just fitting it nicely to that. You shouldn't have any problems fitting this one because obviously your gusset is already in place and already stitched on, so this should fit perfectly anyway. Lots of clips because you've got that bit inside fighting to get out, I know. And that's the only little struggle with this bag, is actually there's not that many hard processes to it. The only challenge really is holding everything together in the middle. Make sure you haven't got any tucks at those corners. We don't need to do any snipping here because the snipping was just on the gusset, not on the body pieces. So now I'm ready to stitch all the way around that again with a 1 centimetre or 3/8 of the seam allowance, 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So the easiest way to do that is to flip it over and do it from this side, the outer where you already stitched. So we want to follow that exact stitch line that you already made. And you're starting where your notches are. Don't go any further up. Start at your notch and where your gussets are hitting or stopping. Going all the way around the top of the previous stitch line. Just as an aside here, just before I start sewing, if you are struggling with bulk, if you've put extra long handles on it or anything, you're finding you've got too much bulk inside, you can do half and then do the other half. Or if you open up, if you turn it over and have a look inside that pocket, you've got that big pocket there, if you open the zip inside there, you can pull your straps out through there or anything that's too bulky. It's usually alright for the first side, it's the second side that gets a bit bulkier. So let's stitch this side. So starting from our notch only, we're not going any further. You don't want to go right up to where the zip is. Actually, one of my testers said she found putting a box or something to raise this side actually helped with the bulk. Just putting my hand in that pocket to pull some of the bulk from the side, from this side. Yeah, beautiful. Just check you've caught everything in, both sides. Yeah, we're looking nice and even. So now I'm going to clip the curves and trim them a little, just around the curves themselves. We don't want to do it too much because we want them there for strength, so just a little bit, and it will help the bag to sit nice and neatly once we've turned it through. And if you're worried, you can always turn it through first to check that you're happy with everything before you trim it. Trim these corners a little bit, just probably only by half, not a huge amount. and then we're ready to turn it through. So if you turn it over to your lining side, put your hand inside the pocket, so you've got your open pocket back there. You can turn the whole thing through. Make sure your zip's fully open. Should have told you that beforehand, it would have helped. Nice and gently. Whee! Have a look at your curves. So just push it through, have a look, make sure you're happy with the curves on that bottom edge. So take a look from the inside. You can pop it, pull those zips out of the corners. You can pop those out just to have a look, make sure everything's looking good. So this bag we turn one side through, then make the other side and turn that side through. So there we are. Yep, that's looking good. So it's worth giving it a press at this stage as well, because it's easier to get into that one side before you put the other side on. So I will go and do that. I mean, I'm on waterproof canvas here, so it won't take much of a won't take much heat anyway, but I'll go and give it a little tickle. But you can see how good that's looking already. So that's one side completed. So I've just given that a quick press. It's starting to look nice. Obviously waterproof canvas, I've just pressed it from the inside. But you could use a cloth and a low temperature iron on the outside too. So next step is stage 3. So I want to pop that, should we say, inside out again, so my lining is outermost. And then place your bag so that you have this completed portion away from you. So down here we've got the outer and the remaining lining. Now also push the remaining lining up away from you. So you've literally just got that one outer that you're going to be working on. Your lining, your loose lining is now flipped up behind here, and you've got your finished portion here as well. So lift the completed portion, the completed front body, and fold it down onto the outer back. And you'll see it should just match up nicely with your curves and everything else there. And as with the previous side, we're going to clip the centre point and our snips at the gussets, our notches with gussets. I'll match our notches to our gusset ends, and then we're going to clip all the way around again. And if we need to snip the gusset to ease it round, we can do that too. So make sure you've got your loose lining still up here. That's not going in anywhere yet. So stage 3, another removal of an item of clothing probably. Whew, wish I'd put a cooler top on. So let's put a couple of clips down there. So that's my centre point down there. And then I'll go to my notches on the side of the lining. Well, notches on the side of the outer, sorry. So search for my notch. It's there. And there's the corner of my gusset. I'll match those together. Leave your zip, your top zip closed. I think I mentioned that during all of this, because it's really easy to get it twisted. You can open it nearer the end. Start clipping down from there. And the second side, we want to match end of our gusset with the notch on the outer, which was 3 inches down. There we go. And clip down there. So clip your straight bits first, and then we'll have a look at snipping the curves at the bottom. Now where did that pin come from? That must have been out my water bottle pocket. I'll have to be careful not to catch that in anyway. Okay, so you can see we're just about matching here on these curves. So I'm just going to snip my gusset a little bit on both sides, just to make sure I can ease that in. So within the seam allowance, on the gusset only. Put my glasses on, then I don't go too far. So I should be able to ease that in nicely now. See, it'll just bend round and hopefully behave itself. Use lots and lots of clips now around this corner, because we're getting onto the final stages, so you do get quite a few layers. There we go, that fits perfectly. And do all your adjusting with your clips and everything before you get to the machine. It never works if you try and do it when you get there. I should know. I've done it enough. Done it wrong enough, that is. And then that should make that behave and fit in nicely. One more clip, I think. So you're keeping the edge of your gusset lined up all the time with the edge of your outer. Lots and lots of clips on the edge. There we are. So make sure you've got that loose lining still there, you don't want that in anywhere. So just as before, starting and finishing on that notch, or where the gusset starts, we're going to stitch all the way around with a 1 centimetre or 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, all the way finishing on the end of the gusset at the other side, at your notch on the outer. If you want to open your top zip, you can do it. It'll help a little bit, but you do need to zip it up again before you put the next layer on. Stop and manoeuvre your folds around if you need to. You can always sort of realign that gusset because you get a little bit of bulk in the corner there, so you can just pull it up and out of the way so you get a nice smooth seam around the corner. Make sure you haven't got anything in there that shouldn't be, linings out the way, any straps out the way. Zip that zip up on your zip pocket, by the way. We don't want that open now because we'll get confused with what we're turning through where. Right, okay, so that is now attached. Double check it. That's fine. Have a peek inside at this stage if you want to, just to see what it's looking like. Make sure you're happy with your corners. And they're sitting nice. Actually, that's sitting fine in there. Yep. Okay, straps back in, flaps back in, and do your zip up. We do not want to twist that zip because there's always a possibility. Okay, so we've done that. We've just got that last flappy bit of line in there and we're going to attach that to the bag. So turn it over. So this is stage 4 and this is the one where you might need to remove your cardigan if you haven't done it already because it is warm work. But then we're on the home straight, so we're just about there now. So we're laying it flat. You've got your zip pocket facing you. This is the outer that you've just been working on. So your seam is down there that we're going to attach this lining to. So grab that lining, I'm going to pull it all the way over. I'm going to push this down inside, squeeze it all down inside and drag this lining over and clip it on. And just to reiterate that, you've got your outer there on the back that you've just been working on. That's the single seam that you've just made at the bottom. This is our loose lining at the top, and this is your completed side that we're now going to squish everything in, get it all out of the way. And we're going to pull over that loose lining and clip it in place on the seam that we were just working on. So match that bottom notch first. So that is our remaining raw edge. So I'll put a couple of clips in the bottom, and then we'll move to our side notches. So this side, this fourth stage, definitely doing 2 halves if you struggle, because it can be quite bulky. So I'm looking for the notch on my lining, which is there, and I'm matching it up to the top of the gusset and the snip or notch on the other side. So put a few in that side. Now you haven't got any snipping to do again because your gusset's already in place, so you shouldn't have much manoeuvring on this side. It's just a little bit of bulk that you're going to be working with. So you should be able to just nicely pull that over the existing curve and clip it in place. Second side, find your notch on the lining. Keep everything squished inside. As I say, do it in 2 halves by all means, because it would be a lot easier. So you see everything just falls into place here. If you clip it first, make sure everything's fitting correctly, and then take half the clips off. Do half so you can get your hand in there and move things around. Take it away from the machine and then do the other half. But obviously I like to get it all done in one here. Lots of easy operations with this. It's just the holding the bulk into the middle. That's the only real tricky thing with this. So there we go. We're all clipped all the way around. I'm going to clip there. So I'm ready to stitch that on. So I'm going to flip it again to the other side, and I'm going to stitch over the line I originally did in my last operation in stage 3. So I'm starting at the notches and the top of the gusset, all the way around on top of the existing stitch line to the other notch and top of the gusset on that side. So make sure all your dangly bits are out of the way when you're sewing it. We don't want any straps or anything caught in. And then you can put your hand inside that pocket and move things around while you're sewing as well to pull things out of the way of the machine. Okay, so let's make a start on there. It does help to actually keep your hand inside that pocket so you can keep everything moving inside, moving around. Pull the bulk away from the other side now, push it over the other side. Looking good. Just have a double check, make sure you're happy with everything, and then we can snip those corners again and trim the seams down. So I actually just filmed snipping the corners and trimming them down, and then realised my camera wasn't had conked out and stopped working, so apologies for that. So that's all I've done. I've just snipped the corners and trimmed it down like we did on the other side. So now we're ready to turn it through for the final time. Are we ready? Nice and gently, bit at a time. There we go. Now you can, once you've got it to this stage, you will be inside out, so you can give that a press if you want to before you go any further. Undo your top zip, and then we can turn it through completely. Hold on to those zip tabs, make sure nothing is falling off the end. We don't want to lose a zip puller at this last stage, and we've all done that as well, haven't we? Push those corners out. Beautiful, hopefully. And give it a zip up, just make sure it's sitting perfectly, and give it a final press. I say a final press. There's no such thing as a final press with bag making. Is the more you press, the better your end result. So just keep pressing. We've got like under pressing before you've finished something. So the more under pressing you do, the better your result in the end. So give that a press and then we'll finish off the side seams. In fact, while you're pressing it, take a break. You deserve another brew. It's a long bag. Have a rest. These last bits are really easy, I promise. So if you recovered, we're just going to top stitch these edges closed. So you'll know where we had those little seams that turned in. Here. They should now have fallen nicely inside. So those were those pesky side hems. And they should have folded themselves inside. Just help them tidy up. And then clip them nicely into place. And this is where we do the top stitching of the full bag. I'm going to drop that inside for a minute so I'm not making such a racket. Second one. Just fold those hems inside nicely. They should have fallen into the right place now anyway. 2 or 3 clips on each one. And the last one, there is a naughty thread, trim. Make sure you're matching up that lining with the outer perfectly because the top stitch is going to keep that all in place and held together now. So that's the only thing we're fastening up really, although we're top stitching around the whole bag now. That's the only little pieces that are actually going to be held together with top stitch and the final flourish as such. So let's top stitch all the way around. So if you start underneath one of the flaps, hold your zip upwards and out of the way, top stitching just 3mm or 1/8 of an inch underneath the flap, and we're going to go up the sides to enclose those little seams all the way across the top and back down the other side in the same way. So back down your little pesky seams, across the top of the gusset and back up, or finishing there. So complete the circle. Keep your zips pulled up out of the way and then you'll be able to get all the way around without stopping. Okay, so I'm going to work on the free arm of my machine because I find it easier for going around the top of bags, but you could also stitch from inside the bag, whatever works for you. So I like to stitch from the outside. I'm going to start just underneath one of the gussets. Keep that zip tail up and out of the way. Top stitching on the front and back sit just over the top of your overlay strip. Trim any last bits, and yay, bag finished. So now we're going to have a little bit of fun with those zip ends and finally keep them quiet. And put our zip ends on there and make our crossbody strap, and then that will be the bag complete. Press it again, keep pressing, it's just yummy. So let's add our zip ends. We are going to close the pocket bags inside I just thought I'd do the zip ends first because I'm going to use a bit of glue and it'll give them time to dry. So grab your zip end pieces F. You can use metal zip ends or anything you want, or finish the zip ends in any way you like. Just leave a decent tail on there. We're going to leave a 4-inch tail, a 10.5 centimetre tail, because you need it to give good access to the bag. So you want that bag to be able to open fully. If you were to cut the zip right at the end here, it'll become like a barrel bag and you won't have access, good access to the bag itself and be able to open it fully and see the contents. So just zip the zip up halfway, third of the way, whatever. And we're going to measure 4 inches or 10.5 centimetres from our little seams on the side. So remember your little pesky seams, so 4 inches is about there. I'm just going to snip that off. Be brave. Ping. Oh, guess I'll clear that up later. And then just snip the corners off, just so you're nothing's showing at the bottom of your zip ends. And then I'm going to grab a bit of glue. You can use double-sided tape or just clips, whatever works for you. I'm going to add a little bit of glue to both sides of my zip end. As I say, double-sided tape. I find the glue works a bit better, really. But you can just clip it. Take my zip end and place it into, take the end of my zip tail, and just position it onto the zip end, fold it in place. I would just stand your bag up and make sure that your zip is sort of laying centrally and the zip tab piece looks like it's falling in the right place, because it's easy to get it off centre. There we go. There we are. So that's one done. I'll clip that. I'll stitch it in a minute once I've done my pocket bags, just to give it a minute for the glue to dry. Do the other one. So I want 4 inches from the end of the bag. About there. It's not an exact science, just leave plenty. Cleaning elves? Unfortunately not. I'm the cleaning elf. And then a bit of glue on this one. Put the lid back on that. And I'll just position these carefully, because this is your open end of your zip. Oh no! The cleaning elves are definitely going to have to get that bit, if I'm going to get that now before it sets hard. Okay, make sure you're lined up nicely in there. Am I straight? I'm trying to do it upside down. I'll just turn it around a sec. Looking straight. Clip that in place. So while we're waiting for that glue to dry, we can close our pockets. So just open your bag and pull out one of your large pockets inside. It should fold neatly together. And let's clip that closed. I'm going to do the same to both pockets, and we'll just swish across there, close to the edge, just to close everything off. Just 3mm or 1/8 of an inch. That's one. In fact, I'll do the other while we're here. Unzip your zip. Pull your pocket lining out. And match the hems nicely. You folded them earlier, so they should fall nicely in line. It's one of the benefits of pressing throughout. So I'll stitch those up. That's one trim. And our other one, tuck that one in back inside. our second pocket. So that's your pockets stitched. Tuck that back in. It's both done. So close that zipper pocket again. Let's have a look at our zip ends. Hopefully they've dried a little bit now. So now you've got a choice. You can either stitch all the way around your zip end, so 3mm, 1/8 of an inch from the edge, or you can do a couple of lines of stitching, 2 or 3 lines of stitching, anything. It really doesn't matter. It's just to secure that zip in place. So definitely do a line across the top there and maybe another one in the middle. But again, you can use it as a feature. You can make a cross on it or a box, whichever you feel. I'll just do a couple of lines today. See, I said I was going to do 2 lines and then I end up doing a box after all, but really, whatever suits. It's just as long as you can hold that zip end in nice and firmly. So we'll do the other one. Trim any loose ends, and that, apart from our crossbody strap, is our bag complete. So let's get on and make the crossbody strap. I think I'll probably show you that in picture format, in diagram format. It might be easier to see, and then we'll put everything together. So grab your piece S, which is your crossbody strap, and that is your webbing at 153 centimetres or 60 inches long. You also want your adjuster buckle and your swivel clasps, and they are 1.5 inches in width. If you do want to make your crossbody strap in fabric rather than webbing, I've also got an additional video on the YouTube channel to help, so I'll put a link in below and above. So for a 1.5 inch wide strap in fabric, you'd actually cut your fabric 6 inches wide to start with. Okay, so if we're using webbing, thread your 1.5 inch webbing over the centre bar of your adjuster buckle. Pull about 2 inches or 5 centimetres of webbing through the buckle and fold back on itself so that the bar of the adjuster is enclosed. Now you can fold the raw edge of the webbing in underneath, or you can leave it raw. Clip that in place and stitch a box shape to secure. Then thread your first lobster clasp onto the free end of the webbing and position it close to the adjuster buckle. Next, take the loose end of the webbing and thread it through the adjuster buckle over the top of the fixed strap and adjuster bar to form a loop. Pull 2/3 of the webbing through. So now thread the second lobster clasp onto the loose end of the webbing. Pull 2 inches or 5 centimetres of the strap through it and fold back on itself. Tuck in the raw edge and stitch a box shape to secure it again. So all you have to do now is clip your completed crossbody strap onto the D-rings of your bag and you are done.
Well done folks, that was a marathon sew. All that's left to do is clip on your crossbody strap and you're ready to jet off just about anywhere. I really hope you enjoyed making it with me today. You might need a little rest now, but do make the matching travel clutch tomorrow. It's a really quick and easy sew and it sits beautifully with your weekend bag. Why not make the packing pods too? 2 medium or 1 large and 2 small fits snugly inside the bag for perfectly organised and stylish travel. Join the Facebook group for help to show pics of your escape pod. The link is in the text below the video, or share on Instagram using #SpencerOg. Find more of my patterns and bag making hardware at www.spencerog.com. And for regular free bag making tutorials, please do subscribe to my YouTube channel while you're on here. If you're looking for links to the products used in the video or to any of the videos I mentioned, then just check the text below the video and the links are in there. So what are you waiting for? Go sew!